Good evening, everybody. 10 p.m. on our Friday evening, a frigid Friday evening. I haven't felt cold like this since back in my Anchorage, Alaska days, and we're going way back, like almost 15 years back with this. Man, that air's got some bite tonight. I hope you are staying warm, and I hope you have plans on managing ways to stay warm over these next few days. Look, we got a lot going on here. There's no sugarcoating it. We're not going to overhype anything here. We're just going to kind of give you the straight. This is what we've got, and our reality is it is cold. It's going to be very cold, and increasingly so as we head into our weekend and early next week. It is also going to be increasingly snowy, and yes, there will be impacts and headaches that come along with that. With that in mind, I want to show you this. This is the landing page here to the National Weather Service. This is weather.gov. I'm just ballparking here. I would estimate that roughly 2/3 of the lower 48 is under some kind of a winter weather headline right now, whether it be for cold, for snow, or for ice. All of these pink counties, and these go, by the way, to the Texas-Mexico border. Those are winter storm warnings. That's what we have in western New York. That's what we have in almost all of the state of New York, for that matter, too. These are ice storm warnings in purple, and this could be a catastrophic ice storm in parts of Louisiana, in Mississippi, and big issues in North Texas, in parts of the Carolinas here. So, you know the old saying that misery loves company. There's plenty of company to be had here for different reasons, but plenty of company. Latest check on the current numbers. These are air temperatures right now. It is 3 degrees in Rochester, New York. It is 1 in Buffalo. We're below 0 from Wellsville to Olean and Jamestown. Now, we know it's also breezy. You could feel it. You could see it with all the snow that's also blowing around here, which is a problem in and of itself. That drops your wind chill numbers down to that. Yeah, 14 below in Rochester, 19 below in Buffalo, 23 below 0 in Wellsville. So, it's 10:02 right now on a Friday night. I would imagine that most of you are nice and warm and snuggled up. Maybe you've got a fire going in the living room, whatever way you've got here that you're not venturing outdoors with this. And let's be honest with ourselves. There are parts of the world that get way colder than this, and life goes on. People are acclimated to that. This can be challenging cold, and this can be life-threatening cold in the wrong circumstances, which, fortunately, none of us are going to ever find ourselves in with this. But it is a reality here that we have to be smart. This is serious cold, even though we're in the heart of winter and it gets cold here. At certain thresholds and certain numbers, it can affect you. And I'll tell you from my own personal experience tonight, we lost power at my place for about an hour earlier this evening, and the temperature in that house dropped about 10 to 15 degrees just like that. And you better believe I was kind of in a small panic mode here of what do you do on a night like this if you end up losing power for any appreciable amount of time? And there's really no great answers to that. So fortunately, it came back on. We don't have widespread power outages, but on nights like this, it's not particularly uncommon to get some sporadic issues. And hopefully it's just going to be short term if you end up being one of those issues. Satellite and radar at this hour. It's mainly just going to be the radar because we've got all the pink, all the warnings that are covering up the satellite layer here. But we've got lake effect snow. This band of lake effect snow is quite potent. It is hugging the lakeshore from Hamlin to Hilton to Parma, the north side of Greece, Charlotte, Irondequoit. It then makes more of a direct connection inland here along 104 into Wayne County toward Williamson, toward Ontario, Pulteneyville, Sodus Point. It kind of backs off a little bit toward the Chimney Bluffs, but Wolcott has taken it on the chin over these last few hours. This is what is prompting a winter weather advisory tonight. And when I show you the snow map a little bit later on in this broadcast, you're going to see some really big numbers. And some of these numbers might be a little bit different from other sources, other TV stations, other folks on social media. We're all kind of saying a similar thing here, but instead of just isolating how much snow is coming Sunday into Monday, we're going, well, why would we stop there? Why is the snow tonight not important? So that's going to be including some of what you are getting out of this, which will be on a localized level relatively appreciative. And we will keep this going through the night into early tomorrow before things then start to back off. The bigger ticket and what is prompting the winter storm warning is this stuff down in the bottom left part of your screen here, which still at this point is taking its sweet time to organize, but it's doing it. And there's nothing stopping it. There is really no, we're at a point in the game now from a forecasting standpoint where there are small scale features that could ultimately drive totals a little bit higher or a little bit lower. But we've kind of crossed the threshold now of when you're still 3-4 days out, big things can go wrong. You could end up, I've seen it happen many times before, forecasting a foot of snow, and then another day or two go by, and that 12 inches turns to 2 inches. We don't have a lot of the variables that could screw that up. The big one being precip type. We're just so darn cold. There's no threat of this turning to sleet or rain or any of that. But there are some mesoscale features that are still important, and we're still going to be watching here as we go throughout time that will dictate just, how close to the top or the bottom of some of the ranges we're going to end up being. But I guess my point right now is train's on the tracks, and I don't think there's going to be anything to stop it. So we've got a good thump of snow coming our way. Future View sees it like this, and I'm going to show you this, and then we'll kind of take things out in chunks of time to talk about impact here. By tomorrow late morning into the early afternoon, the band of lake effect snow is starting to push out of the area. There could still be some localized flurries, but as a general rule, it's kind of lifting northward, which means tomorrow, to a large degree, if you've got somewhere to be and something to do, I wouldn't be going for a run outside or anything like that. It's just brutally cold. But snow impacts are really not expected outside of the first part of the day and only on an isolated basis where those lake effect bands are hugging closer toward the lake. So Saturday overall is a good day. Sunday is the day where things start to deteriorate. It's going to be a slow process to get there. As soon as it starts snowing, it doesn't mean roads shut down or anything like that. So I still think the morning is travelable, certainly slower, maybe not pleasant, but it's still okay. More time you put under your belt, though, as Saturday wears on. That's where conditions just continue to deteriorate. You see what I see. That's 2 o'clock into the afternoon. It's our in-house model. We've got temperatures in the teens, so again, no ambiguity on precip type. That's an easy slam dunk. Wind chills are probably near, if not below zero, that whole time. What is not happening here is we're not talking about explosive snowfall rates. We're not talking about sometimes what happens in Watertown and Buffalo where you get 3, 4, 5 inches an hour and it's an absolute whiteout. I don't think that's how this goes. What I see instead is more consistency. That is ultimately going to lead to the bigger tallies that we're forecasting. And that doesn't mean it won't snow hard. I think it will for a time, but this is going to be more of a good, solid, higher-end, moderate snow. And at times, maybe heavy would be the appropriate adjective there, but the fact that it is just going to be unrelenting through the better part of the day is what allows that slow and steady build of accumulation to get to some of those bigger numbers. Our graph model are in-house, and we've seen some insinuation of this with some high-res models. It tries to kind of dry things out a bit, and you can see the circulation in here that drives the secondary surface low right about in there, just southwest of Rochester. You see how it tries to gobble up some of the snow with dry air after midnight? Is that possible? Yeah. Do I think that's how it's going to happen? No. I think it's probably still snowing pretty steadily throughout that. Into early Monday, the lows, plural, with an S on it, will pull far enough off to the east that we've lost the synoptic snow, the widespread everybody snow. And that means we're going to end up pivoting to more, we're going to become more selective and localized with where snow is going to continue. In a northwest regime like this, it's going to be a favoring of Orleans and Monroe and Wayne counties, your usual suspects with that. That's where the continued snow and impacts are going to end up holding on. So let's just kind of recap, because I know that was a lot here. Tonight is only lake effect. Tonight is not the bigger snowstorm. It's just really, really cold. Tomorrow is going to stay very, very cold. One of our coldest afternoons that we've had here in a little while. But I don't see snow being a problem into the second half of the day. And for a lot of you, not even into the first part of the day if you're away from areas east of Rochester into Wayne County. So get your stuff done tomorrow with all that. I can thankfully report that the local Wegmans here near the station had plenty of bread and milk. Why those are the two things that everybody jokes to go after, I don't know. Voice is getting a little raspy, huh? But I did check, Sadly, I did go in there and actually check just to make sure. They're plenty stocked up if that's your thing. Then we go into Sunday morning. Light snow south to north. The impacts in the morning should still be limited. We're at the beginning process of this. Roads are becoming snow covered. It's no more than a quarter to a half an inch an hour snowfall rates. At its peak, going into late Sunday into Sunday evening, we could approach an inch an hour with that snowfall. And again, with that consistency, that will begin to add up. No matter what it looks like Monday morning from a widespread or more of a confined scattered snow standpoint, it's hard for me to sit here and imagine that there won't be issues into Monday morning for the commute. It's hard for me to imagine that we're not going to have a crawl at the bottom of the screen on our sunrise broadcasts that are displaying school closings. Again, we're not in the business of forecasting those. I'm in the business of forecasting the weather. And with that reality, I can deduce and conclude through past experience that typically events like this that are timed like this, and it also happens to be a Monday attached to a weekend, I think we're going to have some closings. We could have a lot of closings for all I know. Certainly think that's possible. Expected snowfall map. This is what you're waiting for, right? This is what everybody kind of wants to see. One of my big things as I've, put more and more years under my belt as a broadcast meteorologist is realizing the distinction between the fact that everybody wants to see the snow map, because that's what we've become used to, and it's got pretty colors and big numbers on there. But it being maybe more prudent for us as meteorologists to communicate the overall impact, because I have seen times, it's happened this year alone, that we've had some really bad quantity and quality of accidents on roadways with an inch of snow, and then a well-advertised snow event, and hopefully this is one of those, where you get a foot of snow, but everybody was smart about it and were prepped for it, and not much ended up happening. And I think sometimes there is a disconnect between a natural association of the more inches of snowfall that we put on the map, the bigger the problems are going to end up being. No two events are created the same. And to that end, because I don't see just prolific, intense snowfall falling in any way, shape, or form with this, that will help. The consistency with the slow build hopefully will help here too. And the fact that this is easily the most advertised snow event that we've had so far this winter. And we can thank the model agreement with this. Sometimes it just works out that way, that the dynamics and the ingredients going into what is producing these snowstorms are relatively sampled consistently by models. And this happens to we lucked out with that. So there's no lack of messaging or knowledge about kind of what's headed our way. I suspect by Tuesday morning, most of Western New York is going to have a good fluffy foot of snow. There's going to be some that don't, and certainly some with more. But as we just try to broad brush, generalize, blanket, roughly a foot of very fluffy, airy snowfall, which is great because it's not going to hurt your back or your legs or your knees or, in my case, your shoulders to be shoveling this around, which you will be doing if you're not plowing it or snow blowing it. But to the same token of that, the fact that it's so light and airy is giving us very high snow ratios, and that's why there is so large of numbers showing up on this map, and why tonight, where we still have a breeze, which will not be much of an issue, mind you, Sunday into Monday. This is not going to be a snowstorm that carries much in the way of wind. That's great. But it is breezy tonight, and you're seeing the effect that can have, even when it's not snowing that much. It's consistently churning up all the snow on the ground, which, because it is so bitterly cold, the snowflakes are not congregating together. They're not meshing and melding together. Each one of these flakes remains an individual, and it has a lot of air between it, and it's easily picked up by the wind and blown around. So that's why you've got the wisps of snow that are dropping visibility and keeping roadways covered tonight, even in places where it's not actively snowing. Somewhere on the east side, probably in Wayne County, and remember with this map, it's factoring in what's happening now, what's already fallen in the last few hours, and the snow that's going to continue to fall into tonight. That's not all from Sunday and Monday. But because you get that added pop, I'm convinced there's going to be spots with over 2 feet of snow there. What does Rochester get officially at the airport? Probably a foot to a foot and a half by Tuesday morning. The north side is going to lean higher than that, and then the east side is going to lean higher than that too. Some of the lowest numbers may end up being back off to the west, maybe toward the Buffalo area. Worth noting too, Lake Erie is pretty frozen over at this point. That's happened fast. That's what Arctic air will do. It's not completely frozen over, and the overall thickness of the ice and the integrity of the ice is not is resolute yet to completely preclude any kind of lake enhancement or lake effect, but it absolutely is going to make a difference there too. We don't have that limitation off of Lake Ontario, and I suspect there's going to be more lake effect even beyond Tuesday morning. There will also be more very cold air during this time too. The Euro, for example, has wind chills right back down to 15 below zero in Rochester Tuesday morning. So the winter storm warning goes until Tuesday morning. Just be aware there could end up being more in the way of headlines. Hopefully not big ticket headlines like this, but maybe more continued cold advisories, maybe more winter weather advisories. I think those are all kind of on the table here. So I see we got a good amount of comments coming in. Well, I'll get a couple in here. Then I want to show you some of the new 0Z runs of the high-res models. Tonight's the first night that we're getting a look at our high-resolution guidance. And as a weather guy, I always get nervous when the high-res stuff comes in because it does things differently than the other models that we've been looking at up to this point. You're always fearful that there's going to be this dramatic deviation from overall logic here, and there's not, which is a good thing. A couple of questions that we got. Let's see. Yeah, Becca says nonstop lake snow by the Seabreeze area. Yes, I believe that. Missy asking, are the winds going to be letting up, Missy? Yes, it's not going to be tonight, but when the bulk of the widespread snow gets here, yes, the winds are going to be much lighter. How long has it been since we've seen a storm this big? Mike, I have to go back and look because, you know, the tough thing with this is it's really easy when you go back through the almanac if a snowstorm happens between the goalposts of midnight and midnight, because an almanac gives you the data between midnight and midnight. So often, and this is going to be one of those, especially if a storm that's more extended in a time scale, you end up where you get a bunch of snow on one day and then a bunch of snow on the next day. Singularly on those days, it doesn't jump off the page. So hopefully that makes sense. So it becomes very, very hard to backtrack through the almanac data and know, well, were those two separate events? Or was that all just one big snowstorm that fell on two separate days? So tough one to answer. I'll do my best to try to dig, but that's something we probably will do after this is all said and done, because, you know, what happens if we're wrong? What happens if we get less? What happens if we get more? Got to know what we're going to end up getting out of that. Yeah, Micah's saying, I'm thinking back to 2016, 2017, maybe, yeah. You know, when I first started here, I've been here now for 6 years. I remember building a couple snow maps that had 12 to 18 inches for the Rochester area. I don't recall exactly how well it played out, just because I forecasted that. Obviously doesn't mean it was exactly spot on. But yeah, I'd have to go. But that had to have been 5-6 years ago, something like that. Just reading through here. Sorry for the silence, just making sure I've got everybody covered. Elsie, it's starting now, technically, but the widespread stuff with the winter storm warning starts technically late Saturday night, but really for a lot of us, this is more of a Sunday affair. Yeah, Luke, he's going to have a whole lot of fun. So, you know, part of the things in my line of work is usually when we have big ticket events like this, where am I? I'm at the station, you know, so I'm not out there getting to play around in it like I was when I was a kid. But Bolt will have his opportunities, I would imagine. He is going to be a happy, happy guy. Anthony, what time does the snow start on Sunday? Early morning commute going to be affected. Anthony, affected, possibly affected to the tune of it's something you've got to worry about. I doubt it. I think the snow in the morning, even if it gets here a bit quicker, is going to start quite light, and it's going to take hours for it to finally get to a point where travel is going to be a problem. So I would like to think that you may be driving through some light snow Sunday morning, but I wouldn't think that's going to be much of a concern. Anything into the afternoon and the evening is going to be a different story. Donna, tough times for those of us walking the doggos. Yeah, isn't that the truth? I find those sometimes, especially with these drier snows, It's kind of cushiony. I almost feel like it's easier on the joints to do some of those walks. Denise asking, are we okay for church Sunday morning? I think so, Denise. Yeah. As long as you can handle some light snow, you should be fine. And I can't imagine that that's going to be a huge problem here. All right, so let me revert back. We're going to show you some of the high-res guidance. This is the high-res rapid refresh, the HER with 3 R's. It's just fun to say. It's also a really good computer model, particularly for stuff like this. So this goes out 48 hours, which takes us out into Saturday, or rather Sunday night, so not through the entirety of the system. And we can watch the snow shield creeping on in. This is now 6 a.m. Sunday morning. The snow is approaching, but not quite at the New York and Pennsylvania state line by 6 a.m. This is 7, 8, 9 a.m. By 9 a.m., according to the HER, we've got our first snowflakes that are finally starting to fall all the way up to Rochester, but it is light. 10, 11, this is noon. Now we've got more of the moderate snow. This is going to be more the party time snow for the event, lifting near the state line. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and that's where it stops. That's heavy. That's moderate to heavy snow. You've got low pressure area number 1 riding along the spine of the Appalachians. Low pressure number 2, as often happens here, you've got a high off to our northeast. The surface high is funneling cold air down the eastern flank of the spine of the mountains there. You also got some relatively warm water in the Atlantic. That tends to induce another circulation, another low pressure area. So you got one here, one here. This guy's decaying, this guy is growing. The combination between those two is a very favorable setup for heavy snow. Even though the HER only goes out this far, this is locked and loaded. This is everything that we are kind of advertising and seeing. It's validation of that. Through that 7 p.m. time frame, and remember, the HER is also picking up the lake effect, which is going to bias the numbers high, but it's already got a good half a foot on the ground by 7 p.m. That would be isolated just to the Sunday snow. That's a pretty good number. I actually think that might be a touch high, but that's a healthy number. The other high-res model that we can take a peek at, and there's multiple, but this one's at least in right now. This is the NAM 3 kilometer, the North American model, and it goes out a bit farther, so we can sample most of the storm with this. It has the snow arriving a touch earlier, maybe by an hour, like 8 a.m., but what's an hour between friends? That's still pretty good consistency. Snow starts becoming moderate into the early part of the afternoon, and now it starts becoming heavy. Surface low number 1, surface low number 2, co-located in very similar areas here. Pretty good thump of snow out of that. A relatively quick backing off after midnight into Monday morning. How much lake effect is going to, or lake enhancement at this point, is going to continue remains to be seen. I don't think it would be snowing hard Monday morning, but you have to ask yourself how much snow is on the ground, and even if the snow is still snowing, albeit light, what's it going to look like? What are travel conditions going to look like? And the answer is probably not great. The NAM 3K is healthy. This is through 7 a.m. on Monday, and the NAM 3K's got about a foot on the ground through most of the area. Keep in mind that this warning goes until Tuesday morning, so this only stops at 7 a.m. There would be an additional few more fluffy inches on top of that, mainly Orleans, Monroe, and especially into Wayne counties, which will drive those totals up closer toward 1.5 feet, according to this particular model run. I always like looking at the NBM. This is essentially just a blend of models, and you accept that none of the models are spot on right. So let's just blend them all together and kind of come up with an average and see what you get. For me, always the important thing is just looking at trends with this. Do we see any dramatic shifts? And the answer is not really. The last 24 hours, I think there was a slight downtick in overall modeled moisture, but not anything that I would be shaking a stick at. It's still pretty darn consistent overall. In fact, we can take this all the way out to Tuesday morning. NBM about 12.5 in Rochester, 1.5 feet out in Wayne County. It's a touch lighter than the prior runs, but I wonder with this, if the reason it's showing up a touch lighter is because, well, 6 hours have elapsed and it's been snowing. So part of 6 hours ago, the higher numbers was because our snow of the last 6 hours was still, being factored in. We've already exhausted it. That snow's already on the ground. So we have to remember that the way this should work is with every new model run here, these numbers should be declining because another 6 hours of the prior snow has already fallen. It's not going to show up in the forecast for the future. So by and large here, that looks still very consistent to me, and nothing that I'm thinking is going to be changing anything. Anna asking, sorry, just tuning in. Is Monday going to be bad, worse, or better than Sunday? Anna, I think probably for most of you, Sundays, especially late in the day, is going to be the toughest day. Selectively on Monday, there will be continued issues, but because Monday it becomes more lake effect, I don't think it's going to be as heavy. It's not going to be as consistent. I don't want to say that for everybody, Sunday is going to be worse, but I think for many of you, Sunday is going to be worse. Alex asking, I love the planetarium in Rochester, by the way. We were just up there to see the Christmas laser show. That's always a good time. So you get the Elton John laser show. That's funny. I think they were advertising that when we saw the Christmas stuff. So you're going 2 p.m. in the afternoon. Alex, are you talking, which day are we talking, buddy? We talking Saturday, Sunday, Monday? If it's Saturday, you're fine. 2 in the afternoon on Sunday, it'll be snowing moderately. 2 in the afternoon on Monday, it will still be snowing, probably light to moderately, but there's going to be a heck of a lot more snow already on the ground by that point. Cheryl says, Ontario north of 104 has been getting steady lake effects since around 5:30. Yeah, and there's going to be more of that to come, Cheryl. That's part of our ongoing challenge here is just that reality. That's why on this snow map that I've got 2 feet plus out there in that part of Wayne County. That's not all just from the snow Sunday and Monday. That's what's already fallen, what you're going to continue to get into tonight. So it's an extended setup here of all of that. So Alex, 2 p.m. on Sunday, it's not going to be great, but I don't think it's going to be not doable. I'd still go. You just take it slow. Corey asking, Sunday, late morning, early afternoon, driving Syracuse to Rochester. Earlier is better, Corey. I think you're going to be driving through snow one way or the other. It's just a matter of how hard the snow is falling. So yeah, the earlier you could pull that off, the easier your life is going to be. Jonathan asking, with all this cold coming up, any hope for a warmer February? Well, it's good. This is going to be hard to beat in terms of cold. So I think just naturally the bar is so low, we can only go up. Early indications suggest it's probably still leaning cold, at least into the first part of February. And with that, this is going to be a whole other can of worms we'll open up after the snow is all done. Next week, it is relentless cold. It's not going away. And it's not like, we're going to be below freezing every day. Yeah, we're going to be below freezing, but I don't know that we're going to even sniff out 20 degrees at any point for a high over the next week. And more very cold wind chills and more lake effect snow that's still going to be there. And that'll probably linger into the early part of February. Will the lake effect band get to southern Monroe tonight? And if so, how much snow tonight? Ryan, probably at times the bands will tickle different piece parts of the area. How much you're going to get out of that, because it's lake effect, it's best to go with a range anywhere from a trace, a dusting, to probably 3 inches, I think is reasonable there. The higher tallies are going to be north and then especially northeast, closer to 104. Is there going to be wind causing a drifting issue? Kyle, tonight, yes. Sunday into Monday to a much lesser degree. We still have to acknowledge, because of how airy and fluffy the snow is, you just exhaling is gonna blow snow around. But I don't have winds gusting any higher than about 20 miles per hour. Is that going to completely preclude blowing and drifting? No. It would if it was a much heavier, dense snow, but it's absolutely not like a windy snowstorm, nowhere close to that. But even that little bit of a breeze, given the texture of the snow, probably does have some impact. What time of day will it be the best day and the worst for driving on Sunday? Alex, morning driving is much better than late day Sunday driving. Earlier is better for traveling on Sunday. And that doesn't matter where you are or where you're going, as long as it's in Western New York. The morning snow will be lighter, the afternoon will be heavier, and the evening will be heavier still. Michelle asking, is there still a chance that things change and the amount of snow will decrease? Yeah, there's always a chance for that. We're still 2 days out here. The mesoscale processes that we watch with this, like little narrow bands that tend to form in these shields of snowfall, that will often lead to wrong forecasts because more happens than you think versus less. It feels difficult to me. What's the bust out of this? The bust would be everybody gets half a foot. That's the basement. I don't see a reasonable way that wouldn't at least happen there with how far along in the game we are. The boom would be, instead of saying that most everybody gets a fluffy foot, it's more of like a fluffy foot and a half for everybody. So I think that's the spectrum that we're kind of playing by. Yeah, Laura says, I'll use my leaf blower to clear the snow. Honestly, it's not going to be the worst idea in the world to do that. It's definitely going to be amenable to that. Alex asking, what time of day will it be best to be home Sunday? Well, if the worst of it's going to be in the afternoon and evening, that's probably the best time for you to be home. Yeah, Mike says, winter in New York. Yeah, that's also another thing here. We're so biased now with how relatively quiet the last half decade or so of winters have been. There would be a time where wouldn't be that uncommon for local meteorologists here to be building a handful of these snow maps on any given winter, and it's still a big deal. It's still going to cause problems and be an impact, but that's I think part of what escalates things a little bit is it's been a minute since we've had something like this. Larry asking, how long would you recommend people letting their dogs outside for? Larry, that's always a tough one because, like, I've done this too. You post graphics about taking dogs inside. I'm an owner of a Siberian Husky, and I wouldn't do it because I don't trust him from running away. But I would actually feel comfortable leaving him out on the deck on a night like tonight with the wind chill of 20 below zero and trusting he would be fine. So some of this is breed dependent, but the general advice is the less is best. Just don't spend any more time out in the bitter cold with your pooch than you absolutely need to. I don't think there's a magic hard cutoff number, but just as a general guideline here, you know your dog, you know your breed. Small dogs especially, it's not going to take long for them to catch a shiver, and they're going to be miserable. Watch the accumulation of snow on the paws. That's probably less of a concern with this because the snow is not packy. But no magic number, just kind of be smart about it. Mike asking what time in Fremont, New York, the southern tier. Mike, your snow is going to start probably by daybreak on Sunday. You get it first. That shield is moving south to north as we go throughout Sunday. So the closer you are to the Pennsylvania state line, the earlier it's going to start for you. And you too will end up with a solid foot, if not foot and a half, of snowfall by the time this is all said and done.
Get the Rochester First streaming app today for everything you love from News 8 On Demand, plus exclusive shows you won't see anywhere else. Search ROC and download for free on Roku, Amazon Fire, and Apple TV.